Hello, good morning, happy Sacred Sunday to you, my Facebook friends. This is Scott, take two, and hopefully this time my audio is working well. I am really wanting to talk about this topic of self-love. And it's because as someone who's been studying human beings my whole life, I've always been fascinated with the human experience. And over the last 20 years as a coach and a teacher, I've had the opportunity to grow very close to a lot of people and to really understand what goes on for most of us. And I've come to the very sad awareness that shame is the great human epidemic. And that shame is what stops most of us from achieving our greatest dreams, our greatest desires. It stops us from having the great relationships we really want to have. It stops us from really writing that book or really following our most precious dreams because there's this sense of unworthiness. And the other side of shame, the flip side of it, would be self-love. Really, truly loving ourselves. But most of us were raised in a culture that taught us that self-love is selfish. For those of us raised in the Christian tradition, such as myself, we basically worship someone, Jesus, who martyred himself. And I can remember being in church and confused, trying to figure out, wow, this guy died for my sins. What are my sins? And feeling guilty, like, oh my God, this beautiful, beautiful man that we worship died because I did something bad or wrong. And it starts that early. And then the shame continues. Shame for touching ourselves where we shouldn't touch ourselves. Shame for sexual thoughts. Shames for just playing. How many times have children just want to play and a parent gets frustrated and agitated? Stop that. Stop it. Be quiet. Right? And almost all of us have experienced that. And then we get shamed for not being good enough in school, not being good enough in sports, not being pretty enough, not being strong enough. Because there's all these models of perfection that the culture we live in presents. And when we can't live up to these impossible models, we feel shame. For women, having to compare themselves to airbrushed models that are on the cover of every magazine. Anorexic teenage girls that have been airbrushed. And that's the idea of beauty that, of course, isn't realistic. For men, all of our heroes are superheroes that just beat the crap out of people. And we don't do that. And when we get hit, it hurts, right? Whereas, the good guys in the movies, they get hit 1,000 times, but they jump back up and they're okay. And the shame just goes on, and then there's the ancestral shame. Remember that before we were even born, every human being, every child, while they're in utero, receives a genetic download of the trauma of their ancestors going back at least 7 generations. Did you know that? So before we're even born, we already have in our cellular memory all the trauma of ancestors whose names we don't even know, let alone the lives that they lived. And most of them lived really painful, difficult lives. And we carry that. And with that, we may carry the shame of our ancestors, the shame of their alcoholism, or their addiction, or their low self-esteem, or the ways they feel that they failed in life somehow. So there is our personal shame, there's our ancestral shame, and then there's the cultural shame. I believe there's a great cultural shame that we feel right now because really on some level, most of us do know that our lifestyle is creating climate change, is having a huge impact on the environment. For most men, there is a collective shame because we have raped Mother Earth and we have not treated the feminine, both in terms of the planet and in terms of the women in our lives, with love and respect. For most women, there's shame because they're having to be very masculine in this world and not really able to be in the divine feminine. That's their true nature. And so almost all of us carry guilt. Almost all of us carry shame. And as we do, it triggers the freeze reaction in our reptile brain. And we go into paralysis. We feel overwhelmed. And so then we turn to just little things to get through the day, or addictions, or compulsions, just to kind of keep us busy and keep our mind off this deep-rooted shame that we have. The flip side of it, self-love. The meaning of life is we're here to learn to love, starting with ourselves. It's the meaning of life. How do I know this? Why do I say that with such conviction? For 20 years, I made my living producing television. And I did several nationally broadcast docudramas and documentaries on near-death experiences. At the time, the world's foremost authority from a psychological clinical perspective was a man named Dr. Kenneth Ring. And he had spent 10 years traveling the world studying legitimate cases of near-death experiences. He would only research a case if it was somebody who had been declared dead by a doctor or a police officer. They had to have been dead for at least 20 minutes. They had to have some partial memory of what happened while they were out there. And most of all, they had to be willing to be hypnotized by Dr. Ring and probing as he probed the subconscious. 300 cases over 10 years by this man who was a clinical psychologist wanting to understand what is the death experience. Now, people really varied because he researched children and adults and black, brown, yellow, white, Christians, Jews, agnostics, all imaginable faiths, religions, and cultures. And he found this incredible commonality that although people's experiences when they died were very, very diverse, the great commonality was that when people were shown or seen or remembered the meaning of their life, it was always a variation on this one same theme. I'm here to learn, to love, starting with myself. The meaning of life is I'm here to learn, to love, starting with myself. Now, in these near-death experience cases, most people had their own unique challenge. I'm here to learn to love myself, even though I lost my legs in the car accident, or even though I'm an alcoholic, or my mother beat me, or my father left me, or my wife left me, or whatever it might be. And those are real wounds and hard challenges. I'm here to learn to love myself, even though I've been wounded, even though I'm disappointed in myself, even though I'm disillusioned. Now, I first learned that over 20 years ago when I was producing those TV shows. But then, as I morphed into Scott the coach and teacher, I've become very close, and I've worked intimately with over 1,000 people. And every time it's like, oh, I can really see this person is here to learn to love themselves, regardless of whatever the childhood wounding was or the adult disappointment was. And I'd love to hear how you all relate to that. If you're here to learn to love yourself, what does that look like? What would more self-love look like for you? Bella, I see you wrote something. A quote from Edgar Allan Poe. I'll read it. The pleasure which at once is the most pure, the most elevating, the most intense, is derived, I maintain, from the contemplation of the beautiful. Thank you. And what if that contemplation of the beautiful would be you looking into the mirror? How many of us can look into the mirror and see our beauty? Most of us see lines in our face, wrinkles, sadness. Oh gosh. But if we can really look in the mirror and see our beauty, wouldn't that be the most exquisite pleasure? I think that's why, for those of us that have been blessed to have really beautiful romantic love, when we look into the eyes of our lover and they look into our eyes and we see beyond the personality, beyond the wrinkles or the lines, and we just see the soul, the eternal, amazing, beautiful soul. And we have that experience with friendships, certainly I have a puppy, and dogs are amazing for that, because dogs love us unconditionally. So, coming back, the topic is self-love. And I invite all of us to really contemplate, how can I love myself more fully? What do I do in my life already? It's a beautiful act of self-care. And do I limit my self-care? Do I limit my ability to love myself? And most of the people that are attracted to my work and are watching this, you're caregivers. You love to give to the world. You love to contribute to others. But remember, the more we fill our well, the more we have to give to the world, the more that we have to contribute to the world. This is such an important message, and I really encourage all of us to reflect on, where do I limit my self-care, my self-love? Where do I shame myself? Where do I feel like I don't deserve whatever until I do this, that, or the other thing? What do we do to hide our shame, our guilt? Or where do we get lost in the shame and the guilt and then feel overwhelmed and feel paralyzed? These are the questions that I invite any of you watching this video, if you've been attracted to me today, if you've been attracted to watching this, whether it's live, most of the people will watch the replay. I really invite you to reflect on this, because the people that I've worked with and myself, the greatest work we do is learning how to love ourselves, learning how to take better care of ourselves. It's really the most important thing we can do, above and beyond physical survival. And most of us are beyond physical survival now. Now, for those of you who have families and responsibilities, absolutely take care of those things. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Take good care of yourself too. Make the time to take good care of yourself as well. Thank you for watching. I will go back and take a look at any comments that come in, especially since most people are going to watch the replay. And may all of us support each other with greater self-care, self-love, on this incredible journey of life. Yes, we are spiritual beings, but we're having a human experience, and it's challenging. It's hard sometimes. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.